How's it going? Brandon Zitch from Nerdlocker.com here. I am with PJ Perez. PJ, tell us a little about yourself.
I enjoy long walks on the beach, candlelit dinners, and doing interviews with people with faux hawks.
Well, you're in luck today. What got you into comic books?
My earliest memories are of reading comics, I guess. I mean, I think, like, before I even could read, I had some sort of comic character thing in hand, whether it was, like, a Spider-Man wallet or an action figure or whatever. I think one of the first comics I remember reading was that Superman Radio Shack giveaway TRS-80 comic where he teams up with the Whiz Kids and they somehow defeat a crime using the TRS-80 computer, which was probably long before your time. And then after that, it just kind of, you know, I don't know. It was all comics from there on out. That's how I learned to read and write, basically. All the big words. I didn't know how to pronounce them, but I knew how to, you know, write them and stuff.
Were you influenced by any artists personally growing up? Or, I mean, what got you into wanting to draw as opposed to writing?
My first talent was artistic, visual art. So I always drew. I just, like, if I was sitting in the back of the car on a road trip, I'd have, you know, a pad and pens and pencils and whatever. As I got older and started to realize, you know, people made these comics and stuff, you know, I was a big fan of, like, John Byrne, John Romita Jr., David Mazzucchelli, Frank Miller. As I got older, I started to kind of, you know, branch out into those guys. And then I stopped reading comics when I was about 15 or so because, you know, then cars and girls and rock and roll become a little bit more important.
Tell us a little bit about your comic.
Yeah, well, the primary thing I do is called the Utopian, and it's about a high school senior who is really frustrated with his life, and he doesn't know what he's doing or where he's going, like every other 17-year-old in the world.
Of course.
But he decides to take sort of action to change the world around him, and he creates this anonymous identity of the Utopian based on kind of reaction to some events that happen around him. And then basically the comic details his sort of trials and tribulations as he sort of struggles with being the Utopian and being, you know, James, who he is, and weird stuff happens to him eventually, and, you know.
Is there anything that inspired that, like made you want to?
You know, the idea actually came to me probably when I was in high school. Initially, it went through kind of a different genesis. I mean, obviously what I was writing when I was 15 is different than 30X. But you know, I wasn't a loner, but I had a lot of thoughts about the way the world should be, and I didn't feel like it matched up. And I sort of put those into this character and used it really as an allegory for that. But when I got to doing the actual story now, it sort of took on a life of its own.
Is there any characters or books you would like to draw? Like anything you're looking forward to?
You know, I'm really not one of those people who's ever been, well, I don't want to say ever. When I was a kid, I definitely wanted to be like a comic book artist. But then I sort of became a journalist, which they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, but it's a somewhat different path. Since I started doing this again, I haven't really thought about, like, doing other people's stuff, except Quasar. If Marvel ever wants to publish Quasar again,
You hear that, Marvel?
I'm on it, because I, for some reason, have a weird affinity for that character. But I'm really focused on my own stuff. I've got a bunch of stories that are sort of percolating, and eventually will be hopefully rolling out.
It's good news. Good news. Just got 3 quick questions for you. Favorite movie?
Oh man, probably Shawshank Redemption.
Favorite comic book?
Of all time, I would say Lee and Romita on Amazing Spider-Man.
Good call. And favorite video game?
You know, I actually don't play video games, but my favorite game ever when I did play video games, Sonic the Hedgehog.
Perfect. Anything else you'd like to say?
It's great that MaximuM Comics is, you know, here to provide not only comics for people, but also opening up to indie creators like myself to, you know, kind of come out and sell their stuff. So, yay, Jay and MaximuM. Nerdlocker.com, a place for your inner nerd.